Those people who try to make it sound like Shakespeare did nothing wrong, like that some person who's known as a classic, who was some incredibly influential person, just did nothing wrong and they were perfect, like that sort of cult like crap. Well, I've seen people do that with, maybe they don't do it that much, but I know I've heard some people do that with Osamu Tezuka. Like, I have some friends. I know this guy who he knows his manga, but like he will suck Tezuka's dick at every possible moment. There was even a time where he made this video saying like my top 10 manga, and then Phoenix is at like number 5, and then he's like it should be my number 1, whatever that means, just showing that you don't actually enjoy it. And then later on he makes another video where Phoenix is his number 1. I'm like, oh gee, maybe it's not really your fucking number 1. Why can't you just be honest about that? Look, like, okay, let's look at Phoenix, for example. Phoenix, his magnum opus. I mean, not complete, but look, I agree. I think Phoenix is remarkable. I think it's amazing. But, well, okay, let's put it this way, some were better than others. Like, I thought Phoenix Karma was one of my favorites, but Phoenix Yamato, remember Phoenix Yamato, Volume 3? That one was terrible. That absolutely sucked. I also thought that both of the two-part ones, Civil War and Sun, were they honestly just, and this is something that I see in all of Tezuka's work pretty much. I've read tons of the dramas, Dororo, Apollo Song, Book of Human Insects. They feel kinda like a task to read. They always have a great theme in the end. I feel that Tezuka is very good at finding material to make stories about. He's very open minded, these ideas with both, having just as much of an openness to sci fi as he does to these stories about spirits and outer space. His term, all life is precious, you can tell that. But my God, I swear, every single time, Buddha, it feels like a task to read. It feels boring. That sort of compellingness is not there. It's at least not there enough. My God, like I'll tell you this, I'm currently reading Phoenix Sun. I'm on the last part. I would have thought like, oh, this is the last part of Phoenix. This is so crazy. I was saving it, but it feels like I hate going and saying like, hey, I'm gonna read Phoenix Sun. It literally makes me feel like, wow, oh no, I have to read Phoenix Sun just to get a good ending. The idea behind Phoenix is brilliant, but remember, like I was talking about Phoenix Yamato. Okay, that was the dumbest one. I mean, it wasn't like the ending was kind of interesting, but the humor in it, not only was it inserted in, like, look, I'm sure back in Tezuka's time they say part of the genius of Japanese is that they weren't afraid to find humor. Okay, that doesn't change the fact that his jokes are like literally never funny. What's that? They kept making these pop culture references in Yamato, like they thought it was funny to have a period piece where they're making a bunch of current pop culture references. Maybe I didn't get the references enough, but like it just didn't seem funny to do it like 1,000 times in that half volume story. Also, the way he draws people, it may just be my preference, and I get that. Yeah, ooh, it's influential. How he drew people so simplistically. That doesn't change the fact they look like shit. They look like shit. Yet he puts so much detail into drawing the landscapes. His landscapes are okay, but the way he draws the people is just bleh. So yeah, did Tezuka have a lot of influence? Yes, but a couple things. One, that doesn't excuse bad storytelling if he just didn't make compelling enough shit a lot. I feel like he made astoundingly, like his works always have some really good ideas, but that doesn't make them good as a whole. Apollo's Song, for example, is this 2 volume thing. I thought the ending was so dumb and like frankly unsatisfying. Like I thought I was trying to think of some strong theme to it. It's almost like the beginning, it's like things are shit for this man, and then at the end they're just as shit. And it's like keep going on with your life. Like it was some sort of really bad version of the idea of reincarnation or something like that. This really silly perspective on it, and it just turned into this episodic crap that didn't really go anywhere. Still interesting how you get some sci-fi, some spiritual stuff, but that doesn't change the fact that it just didn't flow together. It felt very critical to this main character guy for no good reason in the end. And why is it that Pluto, Naoki Urasawa's Pluto, why is it that just like on the cover of Pluto everywhere they're like it's based off this one saga in Astro Boy? And I saw some of that episode. Okay, Pluto is 1,000 times better than any episode of frickin' Astro Boy, and I would not be surprised if Tezuka agreed with me The amount of detail in an Astro Boy episode might have a nice theme to it, but that sure as shit doesn't. You find the same themes in all sorts of different stories. I do not see why he felt it was necessary to credit. I think he said that it's by Urasawa and Tezuka. Like, no, it's just by Urasawa. There really isn't that much detail that they have to thank Astro Boy for that. Astro Boy isn't even meant to be that complex. Don't get me wrong, Astro Boy was incredibly innovative and ahead of its time, but that doesn't change the fact that they were not trying to come up with these incredible, detailed Urasawa stories. Because straight up, look, I don't understand how anyone could think that Urasawa is not as good as Osamu Tezuka, even if he was his inspiration. That doesn't change the fact that Naoki Urasawa is 10 times better than Osamu Tezuka at storytelling. I mean, that's just the way it is. Okay, nigga. Okay, nigga. And you also get that one Ayako. That was a 700-page story, one of his dramas, and it's definitely, you can see interesting historical perspective and historical accuracy of Japan after World War II, how some families were left screwed over and things like that. But the so it doesn't change the fact. I feel like the depression of Ayako kind of excuses some of the boringness, but it doesn't change the fact that his works are always way too boring. And there was also a thing at the end, how Ayako lives. She's the only one that lived because all her family members did something bad in the end. Well, one of her family members, her brother, is an incredibly amazing person. He's so courageous. He was not one of the bad guys. And the only reason he says that he's one of the bad guys, who apparently deserved to die in the cave in the end, is that he fucked her. When she was forced to quarantine and pretend not to exist in one room her whole life, like the first 17 years or so, he thinks it was a bad thing to commit incest and have sex with her. Let's be honest, people. It was not a bad thing. If she couldn't find any sex, she would have gone insane. I think that legitimately he was doing her a service by fucking her. I mean, maybe it would mess up their relationship as brother and sister later, but that doesn't change the fact that he really was just doing a good thing by having sex with her. And, if you're worried about having a kid, just do it anal or something. As long as he hasn't been fucking a bunch of men, you're not going to get AIDS. Not to mention AIDS hadn't existed back then, at least not in my opinion. There's also this thing where people claim that Osamu Tezuka was like Kimba and stuff, that The Lion King is a ripoff of Kimba, his lion story. Like, okay, well, Osamu Tezuka himself said that Disney was one of his main inspirations, and you could totally see that with like the big noses on Gao and Phoenix and things like that. If anything, Disney was just taking back what was rightfully theirs. And what? It's not like The Lion King is a whole copy of his. I mean, I'm not saying that The Lion King is an incredibly unique story. It's not, but like, it's not like they were copying Tezuka there. I don't see why you have to look at Japan as this sort of victim that deserves more credit here. And then you get some of the episodic stuff like Blackjack, for example. I heard somebody say that Blackjack is like greater than Death Note. It's absolutely amazing. I read a few chapters of it, and it's like, okay, it's okay. The idea is interesting, but that doesn't make it that good. Like, it's still this episodic thing that doesn't really feel that interesting, if you know what I mean. Eh, that's pretty much how I feel about all of Tezuka's stuff. Just because you have, just because you're ahead of your time, just because you have a lot of good elements in it, doesn't make it good as a whole. Like I was talking about before with Phoenix Yamato, just the page is like just covered in these shitty jokes sometimes of this text. I'm like, am I expected to read this? It just feels like a task to read these shitty jokes. It reminds me of like there were some chapters of Berserk, particularly when it gets to the point of Falcon of the Millennium Empire, where you just get these repetitive like shit covered pages of Puck making these jokes that aren't even funny, as if Miura thinks that it's some sort of comic relief that he's providing. I'm like, no, you're just making it annoying. Like there was this great chapter where they're talking about the nature of reality when they're talking to Flora and everything. And I found that what they were talking about perfectly interesting, yet you see a bunch of stupid Puck comments and Eva Lara now, the other elf, and it's almost as if like they thought that they were making things like, oh, just as a little break in between this stuff, let's have you read these stupid jokes. I'm like, no, they're not funny, and they're almost never funny, and they're just stupid and annoying. Like, there's this series called Holy Land that kind of does it in a slightly better way, where like they teach you about the fighting moves while you're seeing the fight, and it is cool to read the fighting moves and everything. But at the same time, it was kind of annoying it was kind of annoying. I felt most of the time to actually read about the fighting moves while the fighting was going on, even though that was kind of during the nature of it. But you know something, Sama Tezuka, he's blah. Fuck him.